Ryan Patrick here. Today we're going to talk a little bit about balloon breathing and why we use that in our practice at Peak Fitness and Sports Training and how it can help you. So breathing is something big that we've been focusing on for a little while now, and I hear a lot of questions about what is breathing good for, why do we practice breathing? And the short answer is it is a functional movement, and no matter what, your body is always going to find a way to breathe. And it'll sacrifice mobility or stability at virtually any joint in the body to make sure that you can achieve respiration, because without air, you die. Obvious enough. And with that, we see a lot of people fall into very predictable patterns because we have a repetitive overuse syndrome everywhere you look. Thumbs are on keyboards, hands are on steering wheels, eyes are on monitors. And these patterns just create problems from a neuromuscular standpoint, as well as some anatomical limitations that we have that drive us to asymmetry within our body. We have a more prominent or a tighter ab wall on the right side that is going to allow air to flow into our left lung, and this can create some asymmetry throughout the body. And what I like to tell people is that essentially we're like a pepper grinder where every limb is essentially twisted on top of one another to create this pattern. And so we see a lot of people fall into this, and we're going to talk a little bit about how to get out of it. So what can breathing do for you? Well, it can improve your core stability. When we're in a lot of extension, when our ribs are flared, our core essentially becomes a dead zone. It's in an inefficient position to produce stability. So when you see that rib flare, extension in the low back, there's just not a whole lot going on. The external obliques on the side have been lengthened, and they're unable to really control the pelvis the way they need to. And so a host of problems come from that. The hip flexors kick on, and we have hypertonic hip flexors. The hamstrings get tight. People repetitively try to stretch. So we want to get you out of these patterns and restore some neuromuscular balance as well as some postural balance. For people who have rib flare, there also tends to be a lot of chest breathing, a lot of mouth breathing. And so we see accessory muscles of respiration turn on with the neck, the jaw, the shoulders, all being hypertonic, trying to achieve breathing without really using the diaphragm the way that it's supposed to. The diaphragm sits up and inside your rib cage like a parachute. When you breathe, it's going to expand and flatten out. However, when we're flared or in an open scissor posture, that diaphragm is no longer facing up and down within our thorax, it's actually facing out. And so we have to find other ways to breathe since it too can't function in the way that we need it to. So the balloon breathing, what it's going to do is it's going to help us restore what we call a zone of apposition, or basically restore some balance to our diaphragm and to our abdominals to allow us to breathe better and create stability. So we have a plank video where we talk about achieving stability through the core while still maintaining breathing, and that's what the balloon's going to do for you. So first of all, it's going to provide some external resistance. So instead of just blowing our air out, we're actually going to have the elastic of the balloon to produce a little bit of resistance, which means that we need to contract or exhale a little bit more forcefully, and so instantly most people will feel their abdominals kick on. Once we exhale fully, we always like to have a short pause between our exhalation and our inhalation. And during this time, the air of the balloon is going to try to come back into your mouth. And so without pinching off with your fingers, without using your teeth to pinch off the balloon, we want to create pressure that's going to stop the flow of air. If your cheeks puff out, if you feel that air coming back in, we're not producing enough pressure here to counteract that. And so the second thing is it's going to teach us how to inhale while we're maintaining that negative pressure to push back against the air coming from the balloon. Then we're going to inhale through the nose. And we always preach nasal breathing, primarily because we get better oxygenation. There is humidification, purification, and some turbulence created from the nasal cavity when we take air in through the nose. And so this is going to create for optimal respiration. So again, the pattern with the balloon breathing is in through the nose, out through the mouth forcefully, and we want the exhale to be roughly twice as long as the inhale, and then a short pause. So we're going to put people into a 90-90 position. So their head will be on a pad to help keep that neck nice and long. And with the knees up or even into your chest, we can create some flexion through the body to allow those ribs to come down. And basically, if your core is a box, we're facing the diaphragm and the pelvic floor to each other to better create that respiration we need here. So I'm going to stretch the balloon out. After a few breaths, the pressure on the balloon gets a little bit easier to push, so we recommend you let the air out and start again from scratch. A lot of people, when they start this, don't have the ability to hold that air from coming out. The ideal position that your mouth should be in when you're holding that air is tongue is going to be pressed against the roof of your mouth, and so that will really challenge you to prevent that backflow of air. So initially, we may have people pinching off the balloon with their fingers just to produce that force of learning to contract their abs, learning to get their ribs down, and then breathing back in through the nose. And when they feel confident enough or have enough control, then we'll allow them to start to cut the airflow off without pinching anything. We also use some smaller 9-inch balloons. Because these are smaller, they're obviously not going to hold as much air, but the initial resistance to get to airflow is a lot tougher. So once people can do this pretty efficiently, we'll challenge them with the smaller balloon. And after that, we're going to assume they have pretty good respiratory patterns. But these are things that need to be 24/7, not just exercises we need to do in the gym. And so we're watching all the time, or at least putting it on the radar of our clients to make sure that they're not using accessory tone in the neck, jaw, shoulders, to make sure they're really aware of what their breathing patterns are like. And if they are mouth breathing or chest breathing, we're going to see them fall right back into that extension pattern and create a host of problems that we've got to undo. So while a great exercise to learn how to get back into the proper position, it's something that you need to maintain well beyond the initial exercise. I'm Ryan Patrick with Peak Fitness and Sports Training, and this is why and how we use some balloon breathing in our practice.